Hello everyone, welcome once again. We just talked about introduction to analyze phase. As I said, we have to find the root causes for all the issues that we found in the major phase. So as part of that, if you can see my screen, you can see the objective here of the analyze phase is to use various statistical technique in the analyze phase of Six Sigma to test and verify the data obtained from the major phase. And then, as I said, we have to find the sources of variation. As you can see on the screen, we have to investigate the problem that we found in the major phase. We have to identify those events that occurred, like what happened exactly, why the DPMO was very less, why did we not meet the customer requirement, how did we go beyond the customer specification. And we have to identify those conditions that exist now or before the failure. We have to keep in mind what has changed and single case boring walk through the failure of the event. We have to investigate the location of defect. Where does the problem occur? And that's when the process mapping that we had seen in the major phase really helps us. The area where the problem actually happens. So, which can be, that area can be defined as environment, the position, or the type of defect that is happening there, or if you are using any certain material or a certain document, or if there is any difference in products or the outcomes. These are some of the things that can happen while we are looking at the entire process here. So, if you look at my screen now, we are going to identify everything in a process that can be a culprit, that can be an issue in the process. All the root causes that we are identifying. That's when, so we call them identifying all potential X. If you go back to the definition that we talked about, y equal to fx, but now there is not one X. There can be multiple reasons for a problem. So we have to identify all those multiple reasons that may be impacting our problem Y here. So problem is also called as a Y. So we have to find the potential reasons. So if you see my screen here, we are going to use some of the key methods. One very important method that we are going to use is called the qualitative analysis. In the qualitative analysis, we shall use the brainstorming method we are going to use here. And then we'll also use another very important method called as the fishbone diagram. The second method is called process map analysis. Now, process map analysis is what we have already seen in the major phase, as major phase will help us to understand in the entire scheme of thing where does the problem occur and what type of issues actually happen in a process. So that we have already seen in the major phase. So we will not cover the process map analysis in this part of the process. And the third thing, which is also called the graphical analysis. Now, so once we have identified those potential root causes, and again you will see there will be many potential root causes, we again have to prioritize those potential root causes. So there we will use the Pareto chart to prioritize some of those potential causes once again. We may not be doing it right here, but as we discuss the Pareto chart in the major phase, and you can see, you can put the potential causes there, and then you can prioritize what are those top 10-15 potential causes impacting the overall 80% responsible for the causes. So we'll look at all that thing as part of this session. So to start with, we'll understand what is called brainstorming. Typically, as you can see on my screen, brainstorming is a structured method of generating unconstrained ideas or solutions and gaining engagement or involvement in the improvement process. It produces many ideas, solutions in a short time. It facilitates the creative thinking process, and it separates idea generation from the organizing or assessment of the ideas. But there are certain basic guidelines for brainstorming that we must keep it in mind, which you can see on the screen. It generates as many ideas as possible in a very short amount of time, because there are multiple stakeholders discussing the problem. And it can have a lot of lateral as well as vertical thinking. What is the difference between lateral and vertical thinking? As you can see on the screen, lateral thinking is a solving problem through an indirect and creative approach, using reasoning that is not immediately obvious, involving ideas that may not be obtainable by using only traditional step-by-step logic. For example, what we are doing in this entire Lean Six Sigma Foundation training, we are looking at a very step-by-step approach of solving the problem. Let us say we are trying to improve things by using a methodology, structured method. But if you talk about automation of the process, that reduces the manual efforts, reduces defects, saves cost, and a lot of resources may be routed to some other process, and they can do more value-added work. Overall customer experience increases, and it's more of a digitization of the process. So that's a very lateral thinking. Here we are not looking at step-by-step approach. Why to get into this entire process improvement, trying to do the same thing over and over again, rather than let's just automate this process and saves all the hassle. That's one way of looking at it. So automation is just one type of lateral thinking. There can be many such things which can be counted as lateral thinking. It does not really follow a step-by-step traditional or a structured approach. Another type of thinking is called the vertical thinking, which is this training program that you can count it as one of the vertical thinking approach, wherein it's a type of approach to problem that involves one being selective, analytical and sequential, like we follow define, measure, analyze, improve, control. So we go step by step in a structured manner. So you need to choose what suits best to solve a particular problem. Sometimes we get an idea randomly, and it can be a very radical approach or a lateral approach, but you got to be careful with this lateral approach, because you need to put entire planning behind it as to will it work, what will be the cost and the benefit, what will be the consequences, what will the impact. Sometimes what happens is when an organization suddenly replaces a system with another system, or then makes a radical change in the process, it creates a lot of ripples in the organization. So a lot of change impact analysis need to be done, communication needs to be done, training needs to happen. So impacts are larger. So there are pros and cons for both the approaches. We need to be very careful about which idea we are choosing. But the point is, then in a brainstorming session there would be multiple ideas coming from various participants, and we really do not have to criticize any idea as of now. All the ideas needs to be accepted, discussed, and we have to encourage everyone to come up with as many ideas as possible. No idea is stupid. It is important to avoid the dominance of some person. That actually happens in a typical brainstorming session. You might experience that some people who may be let's say very experienced, skilled, or they may have a loud voice, so they will try to dominate the session by talking about their own ideas. They want everyone to hear them, and they like to talk a lot, and they will not allow everyone to talk. So these people needs to be controlled. So in a brainstorming session there has to be one moderator or a facilitator who will ensure that everyone gets the chance to speak and everyone's idea is discussed, everyone is encouraged to speak, and it has to be a group discussion and not some few people talking about the entire session here. So if you move to the next slide, if you look at the next slide here, what do we see here? There's some different methods of brainstorming we are talking. We'll talk about a step-by-step approach of how to do the brainstorming. Brainstorming is not when a few people sit in a room and they suddenly start talking, okay, let's discuss the problem, and everyone start talking about the problem. That's not a very structured way of brainstorming. Brainstorming is also has to be a structured method, otherwise we'll lose the essence. There will be multiple ideas flying in the air, and everyone will be talking, and everyone will be talking anything, and that will not lead anywhere. So brainstorming has to be a productive activity. Brainstorming has to be a brainstorming session. So let's talk about a step-by-step approach. As you can see on the screen, the first thing that we do is we write, clearly state the purpose, review, clarify the problem. Why are we here? Talk about the major phase findings. Give them the context of the defined phase. Why did we start? Why the business wants to solve it? Talk about the problem statement. Tell them the scope. Tell them the goal. And talk about what did we do in the major phase, what were the central tendency, what was the variation, what was the DPMO. Tell them that we are moving beyond the specification of the customer, there is a lot of variation in the process. Tell them the sigma level. So give them these background and why are we doing it. That's the first thing we need to do. And then we give everyone a few minutes of silence, and we give them a few minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, give them a piece of paper, post it, and ask them to write anything that comes in their mind. And we ask everyone to write something about the problem which according to them may be causing it. Can be 10-15 minutes, and after that, once ideas when they have taken their 10-15 minutes, we write either if they have written it on a post-it, we take the post-it, put it on a wall, or if they've written it in a piece of paper, we take it from them and write all the ideas on a white board, or we put it on the board there. Now, as on this point, we do not discuss or criticize any idea. We simply take the idea and put it onto the board. That's what we are doing. As of now, we are giving them time, collecting as many ideas as possible. So what do we do after that? We pick up each idea from the list that is there on the whiteboard, or each post-it we select it. We ask the person who has given this idea. Now, there will be many persons who would have given the same idea. So the person who is sitting in the order first, we'll take that person, we'll ask the person to explain what the idea is. Now we do not get into the solution mode here, because this is to find why we have a problem. So we ask everyone to stick to the problem part only, not the solution part as of now. The person talks about why does a person think that this is causing the problem, and then we open the forum and we ask everyone to do it one by one, like a round robin. Everyone speaks about it, that what is the opinion of other person, what do they think about a particular idea which is about what is causing the problem. So when everyone has spoken about it, then the brainstorming starts. So everyone needs to speak at least once about a potential problem, and then the discussion starts. And then people will pitch in, they will talk, they will cut out everyone, so on. So that's when the moderation comes in. But before the actual brainstorming start, an idea has to be generated, and everyone needs to provide their opinion, which is called opening remark, and then the brainstorming and the discussion happens. That's how the brainstorming happens. And so now you can imagine, if you have multiple ideas on the board, it might take easily 1 day or 2 days just to complete and discuss all the ideas. So that's how a detailed brainstorming is done. And whichever idea the team reaches consensus. Now there is no wrong or right thing happening here. We have to reach at a consensus that everyone agrees to something. Whenever we see there is a consensus building up, we take those ideas, whichever we don't have consensus, we park them, that we'll discuss them later at a different point of time. And that's how we prioritize, and we get to know a lot of things about the process. What we should do as some guidelines, as you see on the screen, that when the brainstorm has ended, we'll review the list of ideas, what is there we have as a final list. Make sure everyone understands the idea that we just talked about. Idea which were looking similar, put them into a bucket, into a category. We clarify ideas and ask for more specific information where necessary. So these are some of those things we do as part of the brainstorming activity. It's a very effective method. Motorola uses brainstorming in a great extent. In fact, brainstorming is done in most of the part of the Lean Six Sigma training or Lean Six Sigma projects, because you begin with collecting the customer requirement and end with meeting those customers' requirement. In the entire process of define, measure, analyze, improve, control, most of the time, or most of the tool, except the statistical tool, we'll be doing a lot of brainstorming with a lot of people. So it has to be an effective brainstorming method, and you got to be an effective brainstorming moderator or a facilitator, because if the brainstorming is not right, the idea generation or collection, or the way we are reviewing the list or getting the ideas, that will not be effective. We'll simply be wasting the time. So brainstorming is a very, very effective, very strong method to collect generate the ideas, review the ideas, reach to the problem or reach to the solution. So brainstorming is what we should be focusing upon. And once we have those ideas with us, we put them into a Pareto chart, which you saw in the graphical technique method in the measure phase. We use the same Pareto chart. So as you can see on the screen here, we'll do a very small recap of the Pareto chart. We have 5 types of problem. These problems can be, let's say, if you look at the example which says there are issues while we are looking for a loan. When you receive a loan application, there are certain issues in the loan application. So those issues that the team has listed, what type of issues are there in the loan application? The issues are missing information, data entry errors, arithmetic calculation errors. Underwriting means you have provided more loan or less loan to someone, or interest rate you have given more or less. These issues, underwriting. And then finally the other errors that can be like spelling mistake, or data is missing, and or data is incorrect, and so on. So these 5 types of issues are there, and Pareto will help us to prioritize which area should we look first, and then we can leave. So brainstorming will give you a list of ideas, but you cannot focus on all of them. So you need to prioritize them, that out of 100 ideas that we gathered from the brainstorming, we'll look at top 20 ideas as of now, because that's what we can handle. The rest 80 ideas we'll look at them later. So Pareto will help us, what are those 20 ideas that you should look at first. So if you look at this example, we are talking about missing information is responsible for 62%, if you see the cumulative percentage, and data entry and missing info together, they are responsible for 85.9%. That means almost 86% of problems can be solved if you just focus on data entry and missing info related errors while you are looking at the loan applications. So that is how Pareto will help us to prioritize and look into those specific areas that can help us to focus on the ideas that we have generated from a brainstorming session. So that's about brainstorming. That's about how to prioritize or look at the top ideas from the brainstorming session. In the next session, we'll talk about, we'll continue to brainstorm, we'll continue to look at more brainstorming methods. So in the next session, we'll focus on a scientific method of the brainstorming. Till then, keep watching. This is Shivendra Sharma.